Hi, it's me, your friendly neighborhood wolf storyteller, and this is the time that I tend to do movie reviews based off of books that I've narrated. And this time, I'm going to discuss Guillermo Del Toro's Frankenstein. And I do call it Guillermo Del Toro's Frankenstein because it is written, produced, directed by Guillermo Del Toro, and does not exactly follow Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or modern Prometheus. And since it does not follow the original story, I'm going to classify it as a legend. As a legend is a story that can be based on reality, so it'll have realistic locations and everything else. But the people could have existed, but every time the story changes, it becomes more elaborate, more enhanced, plot points will be different, and pretty much the story becomes more elaborate, I'll say it that way. But, yeah. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Like the original, it is split into two parts. It has the creator story and the creature story. The creator story is not the one from the book almost at all. Some of the characters are there. Victor Frankenstein, of course. His father, the mother dying in childbirth when giving birth to William being his younger brother. But that's about it as far as the original characters go. There's Elizabeth, who is going by Elizabeth instead of Mary. She is the niece of an entirely different family and does not grow up in the Frankenstein household. And she ends up engaged to William as opposed to being engaged to Victor. And her father, in the book her father's died, otherwise she wouldn't be living with the Frankensteins. But in this version, her uncle is a warmonger, so to speak. Sells weapons to either side of the war. But he also is Victor's sponsor for his experiments. Which, again, entirely different from the book, because in the book, Victor was doing all of this out of his essentially college dorm room, because he was using like the secondary room in his room when he was going to university, and did the experiment in there, and created the monster in there with chemicals and assembling body parts he was collecting from the morgue and other miscellaneous cadavers. Whereas in this version, with a sponsor who will spare no expense, is an eccentric artist as well as a weapon stealer, who buys him an abandoned castle and then pays for everything he needs in it. And Victor actually leaves William in charge of getting all the things he needs for it. So William essentially builds a lab off of Victor's instructions with everything paid for by Elizabeth's uncle. So you can tell it's already far from the original story. I do appreciate the science behind they used it. because they used the nervous system chart, well, an enameled nervous system that was taken from a soldier. It was actually an actual Belgian art exhibit, I believe, at the time, that maps out the nervous and circulatory systems. So they used that to base the table to properly electrify and activate the nerves in the body of the creation. They did make a point that Victor wanted everything made out of pure silver because silver is a good conductor. And he wanted to make sure it was pure silver because he actually has a fit over someone using an alloy. But he says he wants pure silver because it is the best, best conductor. I mean, it's a pretty good conductor. Gold is better, but that scientific material wasn't, I believe, known at that time. But Victor knows that silver was the better conductor. It's better than copper. Mind you, nothing they were using was really overly electric at the time, but still. And they were using batteries. I always mention batteries because currently I'm narrating The Mummy, and The Mummy was activated by having a galvanic battery attached to the necklace chest plate that he was wearing in the crypt. This movie makes a silver breastplate resembling the human ribs with a galvanic volcanic battery as the centerpiece of it, over where the heart should be. But also 4 massive battery tanks, which they essentially used for electricity storage and everything else during the lightning storm, but I won't get into that yet. But they used chemical electricity instead of chemistry, like the novel, to reanimate the creature. Of course, as it does every other time, it doesn't automatically come to life. Victor goes to bed and wakes up with the monster just showing up at his feet. And the clothing that Victor put him in to bring him to life. But anyway, it goes into Victor trying to teach the monster and take care of the monster and everything else because he's alone in the castle with the creature for a while before anyone comes out to check on them. So he spends time and everything else trying to teach the creature and not having a great deal of effect. He finds out that the creature can heal itself because the cellular structure that he has was he made Deadpool. The creature regenerates, but it's kind of interesting because he can't regenerate the scars that were created in his making, which is like precision cut skin, so everything's lined up fairly well. But anyway, goes through that. Elizabeth and William come to the castle to see what's going on, basically to check on her uncle, who is no longer there because he wanted his brain put into the creation because he was dying. And after a fight, he literally slips and falls to his doom, and his brain wasn't in good condition after that, though the process went on during the storm anyway. But Elizabeth finds the creature, actually tries to talk to it and comfort it and everything else, and she believes that the creature is kind at heart because it is a pure soul, because it hasn't been corrupted by the world. Victor, of course, doesn't believe her. They leave. He gets them out of the castle so they don't have to deal with the uncle's dead body. But then Victor decides he's just going to destroy the castle with the creature locked up inside of it because he doesn't think that it can be taught or anything else. So he just figures it's a failure, write it off, blow everything up. And that pretty much ends the creator's part of the story. So they go back to the ship at the beginning and go ahead and do that, and the creature gets inside and is acting calmly and rationally, which, any good creature should. And then we get into the creature story. The creature's story, however, does follow the book a lot more like it. After he managed to escape the exploding castle, it starts like he does in the book. He's alone, no mind. He starts watching other animals to see how things exist. Learns that that's how you eat and that's how you survive. Then he does come across the family in the mill. He doesn't live in the pigsty, he lives in the gear house. But he does do all the lessons and learning from watching the family. And when the family leaves, he does, overnight he does actually come through and start doing chores to help them, just staying unseen. Then he does come in after the family leaves and leaves the grandfather alone by himself. He comes in and has this conversation with grandfather, and he actually gets to spend time with him. He gets to have education. He reads all the books that the man has, because the man inadvertently taught him to read when he was teaching the children to read. So the creation gets a decent education. Then he sees a wolf attack, and he understands that life will fight despite not having a reason to. Which, honestly, they did the wolves dirty by having them just come in and killing animals and not eating them. If they're going to do animal discussions, they should at least make the animal things right. The pack of wolves isn't going to just come in and raid and kill animals and leave. They're going to come in, kill animals, take the bodies or eat the bodies, and then leave. They were just in there killing irrationally. Nature doesn't do that. But anyway, gotta make the wolves bad guy. But as I said, the creature story follows fairly closely. He finds out he has memories of the castle. He goes back to try to understand himself. He finds pretty much the instructions on how he was made and realizes that he's an abomination. But he also finds a letter written to Victor, and then he finds out where he's living, and then he goes there, and he gets there in time for William and Elizabeth's wedding. Of course, Victor goes to confront Elizabeth. The creature comes in, finds them fighting. Creature goes to help Elizabeth because he actually cares for her and she cares for him. And Victor, in the act of trying to shoot the creature, ends up shooting Elizabeth because she jumps in for the bullet. Then, of course, everyone comes in, sees the creature. Victor tells them that he attacked her, and they come after the creature. Creature takes Elizabeth's body and makes a run for it. Then Victor finds him, and the creature tells him that, he actually tells it a little bit beforehand that he wants to have a partner, that if he's going to have to live, he doesn't want to live alone, which goes along with the book. Now, the Bride of Frankenstein is actually mentioned in the book. In fact, Victor starts making her in the book. He doesn't even bother trying in this one. He does his whole thing about he doesn't want to create a race of abominations. So, again, the creature does the thing that I only exist for the reason of happiness or for vengeance, and with you choosing this way, you will see nothing of the first. And instead of the creature hunting Victor, Victor goes hunting the creature. So that gets back to the beginning of the book when they're found by the ship. Well, Victor was rescued by the people on the ship because the ship is stuck and whatever. But yeah, it's got a lot of the key points, but it's missing actual plot points. Again, the book, chemical creation of the creature. The movies have this notion that he has to be electrical, which admittedly they used chemical electricity. Well, again, the galvanic batteries. But they used the method closer to that in the Mummy that I'm currently reading by making a silver breastplate that mimics the look of ribs with the chemical battery in the center of it. But it's a beautifully made movie. It's got its highs, it's got its lows, it's got some slow points. The on and off flirtation between Victor and Elizabeth as opposed to William just doesn't have Henry. It doesn't have the same processes as the novel does. A lot of the novel is missing from the movie. The movie really does try to go for more the universal horror movie version than anything else. And even then, they go with the fact it's partly chemical, like they did in Van Helsing. But it's not it's not Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It is truly Guillermo Del Toro's Frankenstein. With that being said, it's not a bad movie. As I said, it has some slow points, but if you've read the novel, you know how slow it can be too. It's not nearly as confusing as Dracula. But it's a good movie. It deserves at least one watch. If anything else, Guillermo del Toro does beautiful cinema and everything else. But yeah, it's a good movie. Deserves a watch. It's just not the book. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.